James Gunn's Superman movie kickstarting off the new official DCEU, let's take a look back at the 3 Zack Snyder films that were released as a part of the DCEU. That being Zack Snyder's Justice League, Batman vs Superman, and of course the movie that we're talking about in this video, and that is Man of Steel. I have a lot to talk about in this video, so it's going to be a little bit more lengthy than what I normally do, so I apologize in advance. But this film, I feel like, just needs to be described in a bit more detail in this video essay, and really ask the question of whether or not this was a good Superman film. When Man of Steel was released back in 2013, it was met with much controversy at the time. Fans and critics were very split on the movie, however it did earn a pretty good amount of money in the box office. But that being said, a lot of people noticed the much darker tone to the film from other iterations of the character that we just were not used to at this time. And still to this day, it's a very different take on the Superman character that we're just not used to. But I have to be honest, this is the film that actually got me into the character of Superman, because I was never a big fan of Superman at the time. But there's a reason for that, and I'll get into that at the end of the video. One of the things that I actually really liked in this film was the fact that I loved the Krypton opening sequence. We're used to these Superman movies having these big bombastic opening credits. The opening credits is an entire sequence on Krypton before its destruction, getting to see its ecosystem, its unique system that they have with their society, where these babies are born and they're already pre-programmed with a design on how they serve Krypton. And then Clark being the first natural birth in centuries, essentially breaking that mold that they have for Krypton, and also standing out in his own way on Krypton than he would have from everybody else. It even sets the stage for Zod not really being the villain in his own story, but actually seeing himself as a hero, because his purpose is to serve and protect Krypton, and that's by any means necessary. Jor-El also wanted to save Krypton, but he did it in a much more pacifistic way, while Zod was trying to do it with an iron fist. Two sides of the same coin, but both still being unable to save Krypton, leading to Kal-El being sent to Earth, which I think is what leads into the sequences that I find myself kind of skipping past a bit more. I do like the ideas that they have with these flashbacks back and forth between Clark as an adult and Clark as a kid, showing his backstory, his upbringing, and showing how he had to learn to restrain himself when he really wanted to knock some people out, but he realized, I probably might kill some people if I actually punch him. And I know a lot of people hate that sequence where Clark was having a talk with his dad, Jonathan Kent, when he saved the kids from the bus drowning, and a lot of people hated the fact that he said that he probably should have let them drown, because he was afraid that if he was discovered, he didn't know how the world would react to that would potentially get his son in trouble. He's scared. I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, that's not Jonathan Kent. Jonathan Kent would have encouraged him to save these kids. But the way Snyder envisioned this world was that he wanted it to be a Superman in a much more realistic world setting. In a realistic world setting, people would be afraid of this man's abilities. Let's not lie.
It's alright, it's alright, it's alright. It's alright.
My issues with these flashback sequences that I had in particular was that it basically slowed down the pace to the rest of the actual story. You have the momentum of the story flowing, and then it cuts back to some very slow flashback sequences. They still serve the story, but it just really slows down the movie a bit more, and I find myself really flashing forward past these to get back to adult Clark moments. Leading into Henry Cavill, who is still to this day my favorite Superman. He is the one that got me into the character, and he does an amazing job throughout the entire movie. Especially displaying his emotion through his body language of confusion. I love how his portrayal of the character is struggling with his identity and his purpose throughout the entire movie. Other interpretations of the character never struggled with his moral compass. This film really pushed Superman to those points, and I think that's something that was unique about Cavill's version of the character. Also, something that Zack Snyder did very well throughout this entire movie was the overall composition of the film. There are many iconic shots and frames throughout the movie that feel like they're straight out of an Alex Ross Superman comic. Iconic camera angles and just overall memorable visuals that just display the godlike perspective of this version of Superman. In many instances, it also displays the vulnerability of this version of Superman as well, and I really thought they did an amazing job at that as well. I know people pick on Zack Snyder films for being a bit more grayer toned, but I think this film is actually the one that did that color palette the best, and it really worked very well with this version of the character. Especially when you get down to those fantastic action sequences throughout the entire movie. This is the Superman action that we've always wanted to see on screen, and Man of Steel just still has done it the best. I mean, Man of Steel, in my opinion, has some of the best DC superpowered action I've ever seen, especially that Superman vs. Zod fight. Seeing two people with Superman-like abilities going at it with each other was just outstanding. And the fight with Fiora down in Kansas was also a fantastic and fun action sequence as well. And speaking of Zod, General Zod in this movie was absolutely a fantastic villain. Again, he is the hero of his own story throughout this entire movie. His whole purpose is that he was made to save Krypton, or to preserve Krypton. He was born and bred with that purpose. Therefore, he's going to do anything that it takes to complete this purpose, even if that means terraforming an entire planet and making that into a new Krypton. I thought that made him a fantastic villain, and also made him a bit more scary, because you know he'll go and do anything to achieve his goal that he was born and bred to do. Oftentimes disregarding reason, and even deleting Superman's clone digital daddy, especially when they have this battle between Superman and Zod. When Superman stops that world engine and basically destroys everything that's left of Krypton, Zod really commits to destroying the planet at that point, because his whole purpose is gone at that point. So he has no purpose other than just making Superman suffer for taking away everything that he is and everything that he was bred to do. It's very compelling stuff, and I will get more to that later. Which I guess I can't really talk about this film without talking about the most controversial moment in this film, and that is when Superman snaps Zod's neck.
Never.
It was an incredibly dark moment to set off the DC universe, especially with Superman. We're not used to seeing Superman snapping necks and stuff like that. However, I gotta say, this was a moment that I think really won me over on this interpretation. Not because he was snapping necks, it was more of what it symbolized for this version of the character. I think the reason why people dislike this moment so much is because nobody wants to see Superman in a vulnerable situation where he has to kill someone as a solution. And I think that's the whole point to the scene, is that you see Superman in the corner backed up. Zod's about to kill his family right in front of him, and he doesn't know what to do. It's either let his family die or he kills him right here. So he does the option that is going to save the family's life, and you can see it just weighs heavily on him. I thought this would be a fantastic moment to really set up the rules that the Superman would set up for his future as a hero. Not only did he take a life and it weighed heavily on him, but I think that it could have been a great potential origin to his no-kill rule, much like Batman has his own no-kill rule. The fact that he killed off this person that he didn't want to kill, and he killed off the last member of his race, and that's the first kill that he had, would have been a fantastic origin for the reason why the Superman wouldn't kill. And Cavill's performance in that moment really just showed how much it weighed on him. I know it's a meme with that screaming face, but still. But where Man of Steel really struggles in its messaging is everything that kind of contradicts what it is. Like, you have this great moment where Superman's saving this family by snapping Zod's neck, and it weighs heavily on him. Meanwhile, you're just wondering about those millions of lives that were killed, or I'm sorry, thousands of lives that were killed in Metropolis. So it kind of feels weird that this family is what pushed him to the edge to snapping Zod's neck, when I would have done that when he killed as many people as he did already. Also, the film can seem a little bit too preachy in its approach to trying to show you that the Superman's tortured. Really getting to the point where you're like, okay, I get it, he's struggling. Like, can we just move on to when he's Superman and not keep having these flashback sequences to when he's a kid? And finally, I think the Lois Lane storyline in this movie is actually pretty cool, but at the same time, I don't think it really adds much to the overall plot if you really look at it. I mean, it's more of like an investigation on him, but we've already been following him throughout the entire movie, so I don't really see the purpose of her needing to investigate him, really. It's really just setting up Lois Lane as Superman's love interest that we all know her to be, but they didn't really do anything with her that was particularly interesting, in my opinion. I found the military that was helping him in the movie to be more interesting, as the main guy who sacrificed himself actually had more of a character arc, from going from a man who feared him in the movie to a person that actually respected Superman and then also sacrificed himself to actually save Earth. This is not a Superman movie. But that's the point. That's why I think this film resonated with me so much, is the fact that, and why I got into it so much, was because it's not a Superman movie. It's a Superman origin movie. It's setting up this Clark Kent to become Superman by the end of the movie. That's why the film isn't even titled a Superman movie. It's titled Man of Steel. He hasn't earned that status of being Superman yet until the end of the movie. And I thought that was a very unique take on the character that we just had not seen to that point. So whether or not Man of Steel is a good Superman movie, it's not really a Superman movie, so I can't really say that. It's a phenomenal superhero movie, but it's a Superman origin movie. But just remember, this video essay is all opinions, and these are things that I found that myself liking throughout the entire movie. All in all, Man of Steel is a phenomenal movie in my opinion. And if you look at it from a different lens, I think you might find some things that you enjoy in here that you may not have enjoyed before, especially since you can look at it from the perspective of being a Superman origin movie rather than a full-on Superman movie at this point. I'm sure that they'll continue with this trend of him being the symbol of hope that we all know him to be. Oh boy, they don't do that later on, do they?